Insulin therapy. Why, when, and how long? Friends, all these questions are very important because we know that type 1 diabetics have no choice and they have to take insulin shots for their survival. So, insulin initiation in type 2 diabetics is a question which has to be addressed sincerely, because what we have seen is that more than 50% of type 2 diabetics remain undiagnosed, and the important thing is that more than 50% type 2 diabetic patients who are on treatment, they too are not able to meet their glycemic goals. And more important is that 61% of these patients were already put on insulin therapy. So initiating insulin therapy is not that much important, but titration of insulin and the timely intensification of insulin therapy is very important to achieve the glycemic goals in a patient with type 2 diabetes. But the question is, why the type 2 diabetics need insulin at all? We know that with time, type 2 diabetics lose effect of the medicines, secretagogues, oral hypoglycemic agents, because beta cell loss is too much and the insulin production in pancreas is not sufficient to meet the daily body demands. So in such a situation, when the patient and the treating doctor are stuck in such a situation that despite best of dietary care, physical exercise and drug compliance, the patient is not achieving the required glycemic goals and is becoming more prone to develop complications. So in such a situation, timely initiation of insulin therapy is very important. It is very important to note that 74% of clinicians or doctors are not very eager to start insulin therapy. Why? Because they do not want to get involved too much in the patient to educate them on daily basis about the dose titration, and apart from that they are too afraid of risk of hypoglycemia. Similarly, the patients are worried about hypoglycemia, but the figure is that 54% of the doctors are afraid of hypoglycemia, while 27% of the patients are afraid of hypoglycemia and so to start the insulin therapy. But the most important thing is that when the indecisiveness strikes, the control is lost. So it is very important to address the concerns of the patient, and the treating doctor should also be very sincere towards giving benefit to the patient in the form of good glycemic control and prevention of deadly complications of diabetes. So a doctor is duty bound to educate each and every patient about the importance of insulin therapy, because the first and the foremost reason behind the patient's reluctance to accept insulin therapy is painful injection. So the doctor should show the patient insulin pen with its small needle and maybe demonstrate a subcutaneous prick on the abdominal or belly wall of the patient, in maybe without insulin. Dry injection trial can be given, and patient, as we know, with such a small and thin needle there will be no pain. So the patient get convinced that it is not a painful injection. So there is also a apprehension that insulin therapy is too much complicated. So the doctor should try to alleviate that fear also, that we will keep the insulin therapy simplest and with minimal number of pricks. So this can also be taken care. Similarly, the patient sometimes feels that initiation of insulin therapy in a type 2 patient is a patient's failure. The patient is not, you can say, patient has done something wrong, that insulin is required in him or her. So we have to educate the patient that it is not like that. It is that with time we may lose insulin producing beta cells, and we may need insulin from outside also. There is also some myth in the patients that insulin therapy may add to comorbidities or have some side effects. So we have to alleviate that fear also, that insulin therapy is not harmful, rather it is beneficial. And hypoglycemia concern also has to be addressed, and a reasonable target of HbA1c or fasting blood glucose has to be taken in consideration, considering the lifestyle, education status, family status, work culture of the patient. So weight gain with insulin is also a concern, though it is a positive effect, because once we start insulin we gain weight, and type 2 patients may be obese already. So we have to educate the patient that the weight gain with the insulin is minimal if we adopt a physically active lifestyle, and particularly the long acting insulins, only 1 to 2 kg gain of weight is seen in patients. So another point where the patients are not ready to accept insulin, that once on insulin is always on insulin. So we have to convince the patient that once we start insulin, it doesn't mean we will keep it for life. It can be a 3-month trial. If we get benefited, then we will continue, and if we don't need it, we will stop it. And it is up to patient to continue or discontinue if the results are not that but expectations. So such a things can alleviate the fear of patients. Now the doctor per se have to alleviate his or her apprehensions too. The doctor has to initiate insulin therapy, has to teach the patient about an achievable fasting blood glucose level and postprandial upper limit during the daytime. And the doctor has to keep in contact with the patients regarding the dose titration of insulin therapy, and if the aim of fasting blood glucose or postprandial glucose levels are not met, then the intensification of insulin therapy on time is also very important. Sometimes it is seen that the patient with type 2 diabetes start losing weight and catabolic process starts showing signs in his body, and weight loss happens, high triglyceride levels start happening, and lactic acidosis too starts showing its presence. Here we can convince the patient that once we start insulin therapy, the patient will gain weight, good health, and due to its anabolic effect, insulin will, you can say, reverse all the negative metabolic processes which are happening in the body. Now, how to choose a insulin? Which insulin? We all know that we have regular insulin with 4 to 5 hours of action. It starts acting within few minutes and act for few hours. Now we have rapid acting insulins which act much fast, and they can be injected just before taking the meal, and their effect also weans away once the food effect is over. Then we have NPH insulins, the effect of which lasts for 12 hours. It takes some time to start its action, but it active for 12 hours. Then we have certain long-acting insulins, insulin glargine or insulin datamir, which are 24-hour acting insulins. Now we have certain insulins which are effective for more than 24 hours. These insulins are safer too because they don't have a peak. So there is minimal chances of hypoglycemia with these long-acting insulins. Apart from that, because regular insulin has effect for few hours and NPH has effect for 12 hours, but it takes longer time to start its action and it's a bit slow. So after food it is not able to do justice to the hyperglycemia. So the combinations are also a reality now, and mixed hard insulins are in use more than in single form of insulin. They are ideal because they contain rapid acting as well as intermediate acting insulins in a percentage of 25, 75, 30, 70, 50, 50, in which the earlier part is rapid acting and the later part is intermediate acting insulins. But the problem with this regime is that the patient has to take 2 shots, one before breakfast and one before the dinner. But a type 2 patient already on drugs may not be able to get convinced that I need such a intensified therapy. So in such patients, longer acting insulins, insulin datamir, insulin glargine are the ideal choice. These are called basal insulins, and their shot is given after the dinner, 1 hour after the dinner, and their benefit is seen in the fasting blood glucose levels. Once we give injection of basal insulin at 10 p.m., we get a good fasting blood glucose level, maybe to the tune of 80 to 100 mg deciliter of glucose. So our goal is that a patient with type 2 diabetes which is uncontrolled gets a fasting blood glucose of 80 to 100, and during the daytime, dietary care, physically active lifestyle, oral anti-hypoglycemic agents, they will take care. And if the evening levels of blood glucose are too high, then too we have certain strategies with our basal insulin. What we do is, number 1, we start increasing dose of basal insulin, insulin glargine, till we achieve fasting blood glucose level of 80 to 100. Now what it means, if we have given shot at 10 p.m. and at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. the patient has 80 to 100 mg deciliter of blood glucose, then it means that the patient has normoglycemia for the period of 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. It means for 10 hours the patient has achieved normoglycemia. But our goal is 24-hour normoglycemia in each and every patient of diabetes. So what we do is, we keep the same dose at which we have achieved 80 milligram deciliter fasting blood glucose, but we advance the dose injection time by 1 hour. And next day again we need to achieve our 80 to 100 mg deciliter goal. If it is not achieved, then we will increase the dose of our insulin, basal insulin, as per our requirement. And once we achieve 80 to 100 level, we will again advance the injection time by 1 hour. So now we will be injecting basal insulin at 8 p.m. and once we achieve 80 to 100 milligram deciliter level, we will again advance the injection time to 7 p.m. Now our patient is normoglycemic for a period from 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. It means 13-hour normoglycemia has been achieved by initiation of a single shot of basal insulin. Friends, can you believe me that in our practice at Diabetes Free World, we have our patients with type 2 diabetes injecting basal insulin right at 9 a.m. in the morning and showing 80 to 100 milligram deciliter fasting blood glucose on the next day. Now during the daytime, we have a goal of below 200 milligram deciliter of blood glucose at any time, and preferably in the evening. We have a target of below 200 in each and every type 2 diabetes patients on basal insulin at any time of the day. So once we have fasting blood glucose level of 80 to 100 in the morning, below 200 random blood glucose in the daytime, believe me, we have achieved that goal of normoglycemia, and it will get reflected in HbA1c after 3 months. So this is the time that the doctor per se should be prepared to educate the patient. We have to ask the patient to send us reports on regular basis, and we have to educate the patient about dose titration of the insulin on his own without doctor's consent. We have to train the patient and his family members about insulin dose titration, and we have to keep regular in touch with the patients, and we have to keep motivating the patient and her family about the good results we are achieving, and we have to congratulate them on regular basis for the whatever good is happening in them. So the credit doesn't belong to the treating physician. The credit must pass on to the patient and his or her family. Thank you very much.